It's good times. All right, we are live now. So, hey, what's up, everyone? Scott Brandt with the High School and Beyond podcast. Brought on a good friend of mine, Jasper Axelrad. We were talking a little bit about what I do with the platform, the reason that I've gone the route of the podcast to share the information that I have in regards to the different techniques and ideas and aspects that the company talks about. And so love to bring other people on, have them talk about their experience and kind of highlight different things that students and families may not be considering or thinking about. And so I'll have Jasper talk a little bit about what she went through. We were talking a little bit about her experience when it came to like AP courses and really grinding to get into college. But she's like, I wish I would have done some different things, and things were told to me a little bit differently. It would have been a little bit different. So this is just another platform for me to allow people to come on and talk about their experience, especially when it comes to the holistic career and college planning process. So I'll let Jasper jump on here, talk away. And I don't have a lot of questions, but as we're going through, those will pop up and we'll do what we need to. So Jasper, go ahead and start talking about your story, talking about who you are and kind of your background of what you do outside of running Tabala.
Sure. Hi, thank you again for having me on, but also for creating a podcast like this, because I think we've entered a completely different era than the baby boomers, obviously. And I think you see a very different need for the millennial age, essentially, because during the baby boomer era, a bachelor's meant something. A master's really meant something, right? Going to a 4-year university in some capacity was held to a higher standard, and it was actually worth more financially. Whereas nowadays, you can have a bachelor's, you can have a master's. I know people with masters who are making minimum wage, and that's kind of a sad truth, but it's also something that is a reality, especially, I guess, in America, where we have to face that reality and come into it with some form of awareness. And the only way to do that is to either live it or to maybe ask questions, but a lot of people don't have a knowledge enough to even ask those questions yet, right? So they get hit in the face later on, still with the parents' mentality or grandparents' mentality even of 4-year university is the way to go. And if you don't do that, right, the likelihood that you'll ever have a successful career or be able to be profitable in any fashion is very unlikely. And I don't believe that that's the truth from my personal perspective anymore at all. I know from my family, education was priority number one, always, almost to a fault, in my opinion. I feel family should come first, not education, but it was just pushed so hard because they wanted the best life for their children. So it was coming from a wonderful place, right? So having good grades in school was very important, and in high school, dual credits was frowned upon for me. Taking the AP classes was like a mandatory thing in my family, right? And I placed out of all those tests. I took all of them. I made those 4s or 5s, whatever it is, and it didn't matter, because when it came down to it, the university didn't want your AP credits, whether you tested out or not. They would claim that it would not be equivalent to taking the course in college itself. So they recommended you to take it even if you did test out. And also, even if you tested out, there were, mountains of paperwork to file and all kinds of things along these lines just to get it approved that you tested out. So it came with a lot more time and energy than anticipated. And like I said, dual credit was frowned upon, but it gave you college credit for free. So had I had that knowledge going back, I would have recommended doing dual credit all the way. And then actually taking my prereqs at a community college, because they transfer. And I think, we kind of even mentioned this at one point, but it was the credits that you get will expire. I think science credits are 3 to 5 years, depending on the program that you're trying to apply them for. And liberal arts credits are a little bit different. So ideally, if I were to, be recommending to somebody a pathway, essentially, I would say make sure that you get a associate's, right, in a community college, because once it's bundled as an associate's, whether that's an AA, right, which is your associate in arts, or an AS, an associate in science, whatever that might be, once it's bundled, it's applicable for life, versus having the individual course expire on you, having to repay and take it potentially 5 or 6 years later when you don't have that, high school IPC knowledge anymore, things along these lines. So I went to directly from high school. I didn't even take a break. I actually did a jumpstart program at the Honors College at University of Houston. And I went in as a biomedical engineer. Good Lord, the people who finish biomedical engineering degrees are insanely brilliant, and power to them all, right? I was looking at doing 5 years, and they wanted me to start at 19 credits a semester. Your typical freshman is going to start, I believe full-time is considered 12 credit hours a semester. And so you can imagine starting as a freshman at 19, and by the time you're a sophomore, they're wanting you to be doing anywhere from 20 to 23 credits a semester. And just to give a little explanation on a credit, right? Doing organic chemistry at University of Houston, the lab was a 9-hour lab. You got 2 credits for a 9-hour lab. So just because it's 10 or 12 credits, right? It doesn't mean that you're not at school every single day from 8 to 5 and then studying, right? And then doing your online tests and quizzes at home. So there's a lot more to it than just a credit. But at the end of it, you have to do your prerequisites. That's another thing, right? So there's co-requisites and prerequisites. So prerequisites are classes that have to be done in order to take another level, right? So like biology 1 is a prerequisite for biology 2. Whereas you can take certain things concurrently, right? Where you might take Chem 1, but be in Bio 2. Those are okay. Things like this, right? However, if you take Bio 2 without Bio 1, doesn't matter that you took Bio 2 and passed it, you will not get that credit without the prerequisite done first. So college planning, that flow chart becomes really important too. So something maybe to think about there. And it's also something, again, I wish that I had known going in, because it is so stressful to find an advisor, especially at a huge school like University of Houston, which had over 80,000 people when I went. I'm sure it's bigger now, but you're also in a classroom for your general courses that you'd have to take anywhere at any university, right? With 600 people. Yep. I don't learn well like that. And it also doesn't really incentivize to show up to class, right? And you're paying a lot of money. So just as a brief overview about, university in general, it's important to think about some of these things and say, is that right for me? Yep. I also think starting at a community college level is probably a good option for a lot of people, because if you can't pass the classes at a community college and you're struggling there, the likelihood that you're going to do well at a university is much slimmer. So that might not be realistic for you. And I think that that's completely okay. School's not for everyone. And so my story, I'll just give a little, like, make it real condensed here. Like I said, I started biomedical engineering. I was also in the honors college. Those two do not pair well together because that means, one, I needed pretty much a full humanitarian degree along with an engineering degree. So by 2 years in, I had enough credits to have a bachelor's, essentially. And I was probably 4 to 4.5 years away from any kind of degree. And that wasn't worth it. My dad passed away in 2010. I was a sophomore at that point, and it made me rethink things. And I kid you not, my Google search went exactly like this. What is the least amount of school for the most amount of money? Okay, dental hygiene came up. And sorry, you might hear a train. I'm at Peaks and Pines and Fountain right now. It's very slow, so if anybody wants to come out and support local business, we're all still open. Just no indoor dining, right? But I apologize. I'll try and talk a little louder.
That's all good. I think it's getting ready to, it sounds like it's almost past 2.
You can hear? Okay.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay. Well, so I put in the Google search, right? I put into the Google search, what makes the most amount of money for the least amount of school? Dental hygiene was one degree that came up. It happened to be a degree that that also registered as the top career, like in the top 10 careers for the U.S. for the last 10 years. And I think the reason why is for many different reasons, right? One, as a dental hygienist, you most places now you get a bachelor's in 2 years. So you take the prerequisite courses, and you can do that at any community college. In fact, you can even do it in high school. But you're an independent contractor, which means you can be put on W-2, right? Or 1099 if that's something, we could ever discuss in the future, the differences. But you can decide your schedule to a very large extent. You can work as a temp at different offices and say, I want to temp 2 days a week, and that's going to be a Tuesday and a Saturday. And that's what I choose. Or you can work full-time, and for a hygienist, full-time is typically 4 days a week for 33 to 35 hours is considered full-time as a hygienist. The other thing that I really love about it, and it's interesting, something else to kind of think about here, is 5 years ago, dentists were considered to have the highest suicide rate among any career. That has fully flipped. Dentistry is considered now one of the best career options because of the way that they've expanded. So what I mean when I say expanded is you used to go in and get a degree as a dentist or in a dental office or a medical professional in some capacity, and that was the only trade you knew. And there was nothing to do. So if you didn't like being a dentist once you graduated and started working, you had nowhere to go. You put your 4-year undergrad in, right, and got your bachelor's, and then you went and did your DAT, and then you went and did your 4 years of dental school, graduated as a dentist 8 years later, did your residency if you wanted to specialize in something, and you felt like there was no way out. Now, even as a dental hygienist, and I think a lot of careers this has become true, with a bachelor's, not only can you teach any high school class you want, right? 2-year degree, bachelor's, right, for hygienist. And they've also grandfathered in now. I want to just throw this in too, because I went to UT Health and it was wonderful. But they've now done 3-year masters and 4-year doctorates, which is almost unheard of for any other degree. They started doing things like this in Europe where they have 5 years together and you get a master's, right? And there's other programs that started incorporating that. But think about nurse practitioners even, right? 4 years to get your bachelor's and then an additional 3.5 to 4 years to become a nurse practitioner. You're still in school for 8 years, right? It's crazy when you think about how much each semester costs, how that adds up, what that looks like on a student loan level. So for 2 years to get a bachelor's, on the higher end, I think it's like $50,000. I think Pima Medical Institute was allowing hygiene 2 years for the $60,000 range. Maybe they tend to be the most expensive because they're like a charter trade school in a way. Okay. And they have a lot of the top of the line equipment, things like that. Yeah. What I loved about UT was it allowed me to take classes with the dentist, and we got to source at the VA, and we got to do rotations all around. One of my favorite was at Bering Omega in Houston, which was the AIDS poverty line clinic. So HIV positive poverty line clinic. Absolutely loved that rotation, and I loved learning there. But by the way, if I'm shivering, it's because I'm cold. But you're good. What I was talking about is expanding on that career, right? So with that bachelor's, not only can you say you want to go into education and you want to be a teacher, you can teach, but you can also do sales, right? Like say clinical is not for you anymore. You can be a sales representative for different toothpaste products or floss or anything you can think of that's really dentistry related, and it is beyond expansive. We have products that people aren't even aware of. There's antibiotics that you can place in the gums to treat gum infections like Arrestin or periochips, right? But then there's also other things like mouthwashes that help with dry mouth. So people who are faced with Sjogren's disease or who are going through cancer treatments, anything along these lines, all need sales representatives and product placement. So you can be in academia, right? Or you can be a sales representative, or you can open your own practice actually as a hygienist. So I live in Colorado now, and in Colorado, I can actually open my own practice without a doctor. And that's really incredible. There's even a middle ground between a master's for academia with hygiene and a doctorate, and it's called a hygiene practitioner. It is a master's, but there's expanded function rights. So you can do like simple extractions or IRMs where you can do restoration materials like fillings or help with crowns. Doing a lot of different things that you would never expect. And it was originally created, the hygiene practitioner role was originally created for people who are in rural areas who couldn't seek access for a dentist. So they were like, how can we get people into these areas to help people who need help, right? And it's just absolutely blown up as just a wonderful career. Now, again, if you remember my original Google search, did not mean I was passionate about it. Yeah. What the cool thing is when I went to hygiene school, I just absolutely fell in love with it because a lot of people don't think about it this way, but your mouth is the gateway to your body. Also, kind of a weird thought here. Let me throw it out for thought play, but your teeth are the only exposed bone in your entire body. They have a very unique material called hydroxyapatite, which is your enamel, essentially. It is the hardest material in your body. And you can think about it this way, right? It has to be protected because every other area of your body has layers and layers and layers of tissue around your bone, because your bone is your depth, it's your lifeline. It makes bone marrow, right? Like these are areas you do not want to get infected. You never want a bone infection. Your teeth, you do not want to get them infected, right? That same bacteria now travels to all parts of your body. So something I really love about hygiene is I look at it from a comprehensive wellness standpoint. And it allows me, it's amazing, dating back to Eastern Chinese medicine, they used to look at the tongue for good reason. You can see all kinds of deficiencies, all kinds of things. And just to keep it more, educationally focused, the course load I might not be the right person to ask because school comes easily to me, whereas that's not the case for a lot of people. But
Yep.
even the people where school was not their forte, they were able to get through hygiene school. I will say what I found was there is a very big push for diversity in hygiene schools. So if you're a guy and you apply to a hygiene school, I think it's far more likely for you to be accepted because it is fairly competitive. I think out of 380 or 400 applicants, we only had 40 accepted into my program, and that was a lot. Most programs are less than 40. But there's a lot of financial help and scholarships and different things to help you pay for that.
Yeah.
And you can imagine a student loan of $50,000. When you graduate, your average hygienist is going to make between $60,000 to $70,000. Not saying that that's where your cap is, but you can get paid many, many different ways, whether you're hourly at $40 an hour or whether you are hourly with commission, which a lot of my friends do, or pure commission. And that commission rate changes. And depending on whether you're working for a large corporation, you can get a full benefit package, or a lot of hygienists, I think only a third of hygienists actually get benefits. But there's a lot of different ways to navigate it. And I think that it is definitely a worthwhile career for anyone to take a look at. If that makes sense.
No, it does. And I think this is the perfect example of what I tell individuals when I talk to them, when I talk to the parents and the students. I'm like, honestly, because when you look at the high school guidance counselors, they're very busy. And if you think about it, it's hard for them to really make those connections with people in the business world, in those different career fields, unless they've got a friend they've known forever that's doing that career field. Then it's a little bit easier for them to have a connection where they can send a student to go talk to this individual. But your example of going and searching on Google is a perfect example. And so this is one thing that I really emphasize with students and families is you need to talk to individuals in the career field that you're considering. Because Google, we know how Google works. A lot of the stuff that is the sunshine and butterflies is what gets shown. And then all the bad stuff kind of gets put to the back burner. But I'm like, if you go and talk to an individual in that career field, you can get the good and the bad. You can figure out if this is truly what you want to do. Because I heard a sad story that somebody from a PepNet group that I was part of, I was sitting down and talking, and he said his daughter's friend, the senior year of high school, all she wanted to do was be a vet tech. And so she finally went and shadowed during their Christmas vacation and truly saw what it took to be a vet tech. And she's like, I can't do that. Like, she thought she's going to be able to love on animals, didn't have to worry about the blood and all that. And then when she saw the blood, she's like, I can't do this. And so you got to think this student, that's all they wanted to do for their whole entire career in high school. And then they actually go see it and they're like, this is not what I want to do. And so this is a big push that I tell students and families. I'm like, you really need to go talk to somebody in that career field and see if it's a truly good fit for you, if that's something that's going to fit you as an individual. Because some people, when it comes to blood, they can't handle it. It's just a fact of life. And so the other thing that I bring up when I talk to business owners, I'm like, this is a perfect way for you as a business owner to potentially bring somebody on as an unpaid intern. You go and train them and you give them that experience. And then they may be a good fit where you bring them on as a part-time employee. So you can really shape the next leaders coming up. And if people truly talk about being a true leader, this is a great way to pass on your knowledge, to pass on the mentorship, to pass on everything. But when I bring this up to a lot of business owners, they look at me like I'm speaking a foreign language. And so it's very interesting. So I find that interesting because you went and did the Google search of the least amount of schoolwork to get paid the most. And you're like, it wasn't really my passion. But after doing what you did, it sounds like you did find that role that really fits you, which is probably 80% of individuals what they do. But if we can really help individuals really do the deep dive, it's going to help set our society up to be in a better position where people are passionate about what they're doing instead of, oh, I really don't like my job, but I got to go because it's a good paying job. And that's not really good for people, for their health and their mental health and whatnot.
Well, and I think so to me, there's a second part to this, and I think that it's a key part, actually, especially living in a society where money and finances kind of dictate quality of life at times, right? You have to have a fallback plan. Mm-hmm. And so, like right now, I'm sitting inside of a food truck that I started about 5 months ago, okay? I'm a dental hygienist who started a food truck who has no background in business at all. And it's been really a wonderful go. It's been amazing. It's winter right now. I'm freezing, but it's been an amazing journey. And so if everything else goes wrong in your life, right, having some kind of career that you can keep your licenses up on, right, and knowing that you can make finances and make sure that you're going to have a roof over your head and your basic needs done, right? That's important. Yep. And whatever that looks like, you brought up vet techs, and I've got to say, man, huge shout out to vet techs. Veterinarians and vet techs are my heroes. They do what they do for almost no money. And I know I would get just so much hate for saying that in some capacity, because people think veterinarians bank, but they do not. They have some of the most expensive schooling you can think of. So your average veterinarian, I think, is coming out at like $450K in debt. And the average veterinarian leaving school in Houston makes the same pay as a dental hygienist, $74 to $76K coming out of school. How long do you think it would take to pay off that debt? It's unbelievable. So now veterinarians actually have the highest suicide rate out of any career path. Last I checked, which was less than a year ago. So that could have changed. But I completely understand that too, because think about it, right? They go in for the passion of animals. They go in because they're truly passionate and care about animals. Yep. And they are faced with some of the saddest things you will ever hear about, and they have to deal with them diplomatically, and know that the owner owns the animal, right? So they see abuse cases, they see absolutely terrible things. And then on top of it, vet techs, I think our average vet tech is paid like $13 if they're lucky, right? They handle everything. Think about what a nurse would do, right? From placing IVs to even monitoring anesthesia, all right? They handle everything in between. Your temperature checks, your weight checks, anal glands, expressing anal glands. Yes, I'm saying it for the vet techs out there. They do all of this for like $13 an hour, and that's a 2-year school program too. So keep it in mind when you're looking at what career choice you might want to go with, or not even career choice, what job you might want to be able to fall back on. It doesn't mean that's what you have to do the rest of your life, but it's nice to have in your corner, if that makes sense, right? So I can always fall back on cleaning teeth, which, good Lord, I can't wait. I love cleaning teeth. I genuinely love it. But that being said, right, if you aren't able to make a living and sustain a quality of life that you're wanting with that career path, then you might want to think about a different job you can fall back on if there's nothing else. Yeah. Right? And then the other thing about that is, if you pick a career like dental hygiene, like even nurses or PAs, right? Physician's assistants, they can do a lot with the difference between a nurse practitioner and a physician's assistant is a nurse practitioner had to go through nursing and get an RN first, whereas a physician's assistant just has to have a bachelor's, but then they go for an additional 3 years to get the medical training. And And things like this, where you are a independent contractor in some form, right, allows you to take on different adventures, like a food truck, right? Yeah. Or if you want to go and travel, if you want to take time off, right, you are not dependent on someone else employing you to where you can't come back and integrate yourself back into society, back into a 9 to 5 if you want to.
Yeah.
So it's just something to think about when there's so many different things out there. There's so many vocational programs. I think a really interesting person to have on potentially could be Greg Sheldon, who owns Auto Shop Vocational, because what he's doing is basically trying to integrate like learning how to do basic mechanics on your car in high school, right? Yeah. Or in schools for people to have basic knowledge. So if they find themselves in a tough situation, they know how to change a tire. They know how to check their oil, right? They know how to do the basic things on a car. So, and then he trains people to be your basic level, entry level technicians for cars as well.
Yeah.
Again, internship type program. These kinds of things. I think linking up with schools when you are a business owner is exceptional. If there's people who want to own a food truck one day or know what it's like to work in a food truck, by all means, like hop on in. Because that to me is something that you really are going to want the experience of even just one day on the job before committing your life to it.
Yep. No, I think that's something that students really need to take into consideration. Even if it's an unpaid internship, that's where you get all your experience, and that's where you start building your resume. And I understand, yeah, you're going in there, you're not getting paid, but you are getting paid in the long term with that, gaining that experience, and you're able to put it on to your resume, whatever it is. But I think the other thing, because I've talked to a couple schools here in Colorado Springs, and I've gone in and kind of expressed a little bit about what I do with students and families with these high school guidance counselors. And I've gotten pushback because I've had high school guidance counselors that are like, well, why would families want to work with you? And I'm like, I didn't say it, but with them being so busy, it's just another extension of what they can do for their students and whatnot. Because one of the sad facts that legitimately to get a student to a community is the funding that's offered. And so the completing the FAFSA is not the easiest. It's a government form. It's not clear. I've heard the sad stat is that 75% of the FAFSAs that are received by the Department of Education are inaccurate. And they don't come back and say, this is what you did wrong. This is the inaccurate information. They just take it and they run with it. And then the issue that you run into, too, is that you have a lot of students that are like, I'm only going to apply to this one school. And I'm like, you can't do that, because that's like you going to a car dealer and saying, I just want this red car and that's the only car I want. That dealership's like, okay, there's no incentive. And so when students are looking at schools, you want to look to 6 to 7 schools to increase your leverage and to increase the competition that's taking place between the different schools. Because when you fill out your FAFSA, those schools get that information and they see who they're potentially competing against. Right. And so if they really want you as a student, they will. The only way really to get you there is by the money that's being offered. I've seen some, this was back in, I think, 2013, this student. So the financial target aid of what we were trying to get was like $4,000. Notre Dame came back and scholarship money alone was $48,000, even though the target was only $4,000. And then if the family was to take everything, the loans plus the scholarship, I believe if I remember right, that family was on the hook for only $3,000 out of pocket to pay for Notre Dame scholarship. And so it's knowing how to play the game. Yeah, it's knowing how to play the game, what to play. Because we tell people with what we do is college is a business, but it's our business to make sure that students are getting treated fairly. Because one of the things that you have a push is the AP courses. Go do AP. And it's like that student may not be meant to do AP. And then you have the issue where maybe they skip their senior year of high school of English or a science class, and then they go to college and they've had that year break and they're like, I don't remember anything. Even though they took all the AP courses, they passed everything. And so that's one of those things that you may have taken the AP course and it was an advanced course, but then you get to your freshman year of college and you may be looked at as a sophomore, but they're like, no, you got to go back to this freshman class and take it. And you're like, I've already done that. Well, that's not how this works. The other sad thing is looking at the syllabus for that course, that class that was taken. And sometimes it has to be shot to the colleges so they can look at it and validate that what's being taught in that IEP course actually matches up with that college level academia.
It's so much more than what you're told in high school. Yep. It really is. And it's worth understanding. Now, I will say as a high school student, right, especially a senior or a junior, everything's overwhelming, right? You're already taking a full load. You're probably doing some kind of extracurricular. Then on top of it, you're told you need to be doing some form of community service to bolster your resume, right? Then on top of it, they want to see if you've held some kind of job while you're in school, and it just keeps piling up. So, like I said, we're really kind of living in a different world now than our baby boomers were. And it has to be taken into consideration, and you've got to be strategic. One of the things that I learned is women in engineering, you almost are guaranteed a scholarship of $1,000 in some format. So if you don't know what you want to do and you're deciding you want to go to a 4-year, maybe go in as an engineer. You're going to have to take all the same prerequisites anyway. And that might be some useful funds right there. Like, you want to be strategic on what scholarships and what financial advancements are out there, angel investors even. Different things to maybe think about with it. But I also think just going from a educational standpoint, there's that Einstein quote, which I'm going to totally butcher here, but there is a quote that states something along the lines of, if we judge everybody based on one skill, right, the majority is going to look stupid. And it's some reference to a fish trying to climb a tree. But not everybody, school isn't necessarily their forte, but they may have a forte in learning in something else, and you might have to figure that out, what that is for you. And I encourage people to take time to try to figure out what they have an affinity for, because at the end of it, if you're good at it, it might not be your passion, but it might help be a stepping stone towards what you're passionate towards, or at least fulfilling what you're passionate toward. So I think that's worth it.
No, it is. And that may even be because actually a couple of different things. The sad stat is less than 50% of students that go to college finish college. And the reason that takes place is either A, their funding package really sucks and the family doesn't know, they just take what they're given. And this is something that I've talked in previous episodes before, is 9 out of 10 families will take the money that they're given by the schools and run with it. The ones that know that you can appeal the offers by the schools, 9 out of 10 of those 10% that knows this will get more money from the schools. But families don't know that because they assume that the colleges are doing their best job possible. And so the funding is horrible, and families just run with it and they don't know. So that's one of the reasons that less than 50% will graduate. They haven't made a proper selection when it comes to the school. Like you were talking about, does this school really fit me? Do I need to look at something else? And so they don't do a proper school choice. And that's the thing is, as a family, you need to go do campus tours. You need to go talk to the financial aid officer, and you need to talk to the admin officer. And who's talking to these individuals is the actual students. Parents have to understand that your student's going to the school, so they want to hear from your student. The parents have already done everything, so they really don't care, which is a sad day that they don't want to hear from you as a parent, but they want to hear from your student because your student's going to that community. And then the final thing that really isn't handled properly is career planning. And so making sure that you are getting into a career that you're passionate about, or it fits who you are. That way you're not jumping all over the place. And so it's one of those things that has to take place. I was going to say something, I blanked. I actually have somebody here, Amy Osborne, that's a good friend of mine. She stated, how can students really choose a good school during COVID? What is their options? And so with that, that's still as a student, as a family, as a student, really is reaching out to the schools and talking to the financial aid officer and the admin officer, still doing it, even if you can't go to them and do in person, still call and have them talk to those schools, see if they're able to talk to a couple students, see if they can FaceTime with some individuals within the class, within the degree choice that they may be going into. So it's a matter that everybody's pivoting now. And so you kind of have to do the same thing in regards with college selection process here. But with what we do as a company, our graduation rate's actually an 84% graduation rate when we help out students with what we do as a company. And it's because we're making sure that the funding package is a fair offer by the schools, if not helping them go and appeal the offers. And then, of course, we have Naviance, and so they're able to drill down into, I want to go to the East Coast and go to a school that's only 10,000 students or something like that. So it drills down. And then also there's different criteria for student evaluations of personality traits and all that they can take inside the Naviance, and it will drill down and say, okay, based on your answers, based on who you are, these are the careers that would fit you well as an individual. But it goes back to, okay, once I know this, go and talk to people in that industry and see if that's something that I want to do. And then Amy said, thanks for all the great insight. Hey, no problem, Amy. Just doing what we can. So,
and I'm so sorry. I'm going to have to jump off here because we're rolling up to Bala. Rolling it up. We actually are only going to be open for, about one more week for winter. So, and this is the first time actually, I think, publicly saying that. But I think, talk about pivot, right? We'll see some cool stuff coming from Tobala in general, especially thanks to Two Native Sons and you guys. So I appreciate you having me on. I will share this also with the hygiene community because a lot of people, I think there's careers out there that they haven't considered, and maybe careers in other countries. I think there's a lot for people to look at, and it might seem overwhelming. Take it step by step. Maybe say I'm going to focus on one little area, right, and go from there. But I'm going to let you go because we are rolling out because it's freezing.
It's all good. No, Jasper, thank you for your time. Thank you for coming on here. Ultimately, I think it's another viewpoint. Like I tell people, talk to the people in the industry, talk to people that have done it because they're the experts. They're doing it day in, day out. I don't know everything. I can get people connected to different businesses, but I'm not going to say this is how it is because I've never worked it. So I'm not going to be silly like that and say, no, it would be a great thing for you. And I don't even know anything about it. No, here's somebody to talk to.
Well, and if anybody has any questions on dental hygiene at all, I'm a huge advocate of the career itself. I think it's a fantastic choice for so many different reasons. Please feel free to message me anytime. I'm the only Jasper Axelrad on Facebook. Can't find another one, so
good.
I hope profiles don't get made off of that one, but
it's all good.
Feel free. I'm here. I'm always a resource for that.
Yep. Like I said, appreciate it. I'll let you get off so you can do what you need to close up. But I think we'll bring you back on because there's some other stuff to talk about. Ultimately, it's just using this platform to give that education piece. We call it ILT, Invest, Learn, Teach. And so if we can pass that information on and help people make most informed decision, we're going to be in a better position than people just blindly going about and trying to make a decision without really doing the deep dive discussion work and all that. So we'll bring you on some other time, do some more deep dive stuff. And of course, would love to have, especially with the trades and all that, have different people come on and do like a roundtable discussion like we do with the Dreamer Cipher, but with this college planning stuff, career planning stuff. It's necessary, and I'm grateful that I have the avenue, and that I'm like, whatever, just go swing the bat, let's go. Here we go.
I love it. Thank you, Scott.
All right, Jasper, I'll catch you later.
Adios.
All right, later. So, get off here. All right, cool. So, but yeah, that was a great discussion that we had with Jasper, and so thank you for her time jumping on here. This will be uploaded here very, very soon onto the platform, and also what I can do is bring, and you can share this with other people. So it's going to be on several different platforms when it comes to podcasting. So you'll be able to check this out, and ultimately, like I discussed all the time, this is another avenue for me to share information that I have, share information that can be advantageous to you as an individual, but also for individuals that you know that may be on the journey for the career and college process. If colleges are out for them, I can help them out with that. If college isn't out for them, I can still help them out, be of assistance, and help them make the most informed decision. So if you have any questions in the show note, there will be the email address that you can send me an email asking questions that you have. Also, Facebook and Instagram. You can find me on those different platforms also. So, but again, thank you guys for your time. I will catch you guys later. All right, love you. Peace.